Hey, what's up, Four-Eyed fans? Welcome to another episode of the Four-Eyed Pregame Show. Here we are at fantasyandframes.com getting you ready for all the matchups in Week 5, talking about offensive players. We're talking about individual defensive players. We're talking about everything here at Fantasy and Frames. And so before we get started, let me just introduce the cast and crew here. It's basically the Fantasy and Frames family plus our adopted brother, David. We got Todd, we got Jonathan, we got Nate, and of course, David from Fantasy Go NFL. How's everyone doing today?
Doing
good. Thumbs up, ready to go. All right.
Sad my Patriots are not going to be playing this week, but I think it's for the best. Patriots and Broncos. Everyone, if you got Patriots and Broncos in your lineups, make sure you get them out very, very quickly because it has been postponed.
Absolutely. And of course, for those who aren't aware, the reasoning is because they had another positive COVID test today, as well as another positive COVID test happened in Tennessee. So the Titans-Bill game on Tuesday is in jeopardy. And to be honest, folks, we're going to cover it towards the end of the show, but chances are by the time we get to that point, they will have announced that that game has been postponed. So let's just take that into account. Get all those players out of your lineup and just be prepared to play somebody else. You know, it sucks. It's not fair. You know, I was having this conversation with somebody earlier that if this is your first year playing fantasy football, you'll never want to play again just because of everything that's going on. Hang in there. It's going to be okay. But let's get to some news as we do every week. We're discussing our Four-Eyed Championships charity tournament. And so we have a new round of divisional leaders so far this week. We have in the Meg Griffin division, Shane Corti. In the Hank Hill division, Ivar Anderson. In the Hans Molman division, we have Mike Wollert, who's been basically dominating this tournament from the get-go. And in the Tina Belcher division, we got Brady McClure. So congratulations. Keep it going and good luck coming up next week. Of course, you can go to fantasyandframes.com and check out all of our divisional standings as well as overall points leaders at, again, fantasyandframes.com. Okay, so as we talked about, relevant fantasy news, Pats Broncos rescheduled the next week. And I believe the Broncos were going to take on the Dolphins next week. And so that game has yet to be rescheduled or postponed to a later time. Talked about the Bills and Titans. Let's just talk about some players. Let's get into some matchups. We got the Jags and the Texans. Anybody, Gardner Minshew? How are we feeling about Gardner Minshew this week? Anybody, David, what are your thoughts on Gardner Minshew against this Texas team who's looks not so great?
Look, if you got Josh Allen, you may have to be looking at him, but he's been very hot and cold. My quarterback, I want to be a very stable position. I want someone, even if I know I'm just getting 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, there are better options on the waiver wire. I'd rather a Ryan Fitzpatrick than I would Minshew, just because of how up and down he has been.
And now, what about James Robinson? There was talk yesterday from Jake Gruden, the offensive coordinator of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they want to get him more involved in the second half. This guy has to be the waiver wire steals to start the season. Would you agree, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you went with me because I got lucky that in Scott Fishbowl, he was my one and only big money move so far. And I mean, dream matchup this week. Houston is garbage against the run. And to go with, what like Gruden was saying, it'd be nice to get him incorporated into the second half, more run-wise. We'll have a lead in the second half, and you can run the ball more in the second half. That is 1 + 1 = 2 scenario.
Right. And speaking of offensive skill players, Todd, you're a wide receiver expert here. How's DJ Chark looking this week? Is he going to cement himself back as being a wide receiver 1 eligible guy this week, or are we concerned at all with Houston?
I actually like Chark and LaVisca Chenault both this week. Chark came back and had 85% of the snap share, and he saw 9 targets, caught 8 balls for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, he's back and doing his thing. And then Chenault's had back-to-back games with 6 targets and 5 catches. So, and I mean, they have a nice matchup this week against the Texans. And Chenault had a career high last week, 86 yards. So I think both him and Chark kind of feed off last week and continue to do their thing.
So, Jonathan, I want to get your opinion on something, and it's something I noticed with LaVisca Chenault and that I'm noticing with Deebo Samuel from last year, and I'm noticing with Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco. There's been a little wave of wide receivers that don't only do a good job, obviously, running and catching the ball, but running the ball as well. Is this a trend that could be on the horizon that we should pay attention to, or do you think this is just isolated circumstances of that this just happens to be the skill set of these players, and that's all there is to it?
I think it's basically just about getting the ball in good players' hands. Really, like if it's on the ground, if it's through the air, it doesn't really matter as long as the ball's in the hands. So I think, yeah, and it's nice for us as well that it's extra fancy points for us. So I think good players like that will they'll keep getting work.
Yeah, totally. No, give it to your most athletic player and let them go do something with it. On the defensive side of the ball, who are you thinking? That obviously you got your Zach Cunningham this week.
Mm-hmm.
What about Justin Reed, defensive back there, Nate? What are your thoughts on him?
I like Justin Reed, especially if they're talking about getting Robinson the ball more. Him playing up in the box would be ideal. The player I'm kind of keying on and paying attention to with Josh Allen being out, there's a chance that Laramie Tunsil might miss. He left with a shoulder injury. If he's out, Clavon Chiasson is an interesting play. He didn't get a huge snap share last week, but that with having Josh Allen out, I think that matchup could bode extremely well. The other one too is Cam Robinson is, I believe, potentially out for the Jags, and that lines up in a good spot for Whitney Merciless, who had a great week last week. So deep leagues, if you happen to have any of the aforementioned teams that are out, both Chiasson and Whitney Merciless are good pivots.
And let's not forget in the defensive backfield for the Jaguars, Josh Jones has been playing lights out. This guy has been a tackle monster. We talk about total tackles and solo tackles. In terms of total tackles in the entire NFL on defense, I believe he's in the top 5 with 23 heading into this week. And I'm talking about linebackers, defensive linemen, cornerbacks, other safeties in the top 5 out of all of them. He has a huge tackle volume play and somebody that should be inserted into your lineups going forward. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everybody from here. Obviously, Deshaun Watson, you're starting.
Just quickly with Dave before we wrap up, David Johnson. How do we feel about him this week? Are we believing, or are we still holding on to week 1 hype?
One key that I would pay attention and see, if Miles Jack is out this week, I think David Johnson has a good 10 to 15% increase in terms of volume as well as productivity.
No, exactly, because Miles Jack is playing the outside linebacker position, and he goes to take care of the players that run out wide, like a David Johnson probably would scheme to do, or catch the ball out of the backfield. And so, again, I agree with Nate. If Jack isn't there, I think you see an increase in his production. As far as Schobert is concerned, this isn't really a Joe Schobert type of game. And, of course, I'm talking about the middle linebacker for Jacksonville. Would you say, Nate, or am I wrong on that?
I don't know. I mean, I think every game's a Joe Schobert game. You're not going to not start him. I don't believe there's a situation. But, Houston gives up. They allow the 7th most points to the opposing team's linebackers. So there's opportunity, obviously, there. He's an opposing team's linebacker. So the numbers fit. But I don't think it's a super play for Schobert.
Okay.
And then can I just pivot off what David said about David Johnson real quick? One thing I would look at is Duke came back last week and saw 38% of the snap share, and he actually really bit into David Johnson's target share. Duke had 4 targets and 3 catches last week, so depending on how they use him in the passing game could actually really affect his usage going forward.
You're not playing Duke Johnson, though, are you? You got some stones if you try and play him.
Yeah, you definitely have stones if you try to play him, but I would say that Duke Johnson could eat into David Johnson's workload, especially in the passing game.
We have Shevin joining us from the Dynasty Rewind podcast. What's up, buddy? If Miles Jack isn't there, I'm with you right there. And let's not forget, folks, this is going to be the first week that Bill O'Brien is not going to be there having some influence on the offense. We have no idea what this offense is going to look like. It could be night and day. We could see Deshaun Watson running the ball more. We could see all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. In fact, I would not be surprised if you saw more rushing yards from Deshaun Watson this week than you had seen in previous weeks. So just keep an eye on that. All right, let's go to our next matchup. We got the Bengals. We got the Ravens. Lamar Jackson's been dealing with that knee injury that caused him to miss practice the past couple of days. But then on Friday, he came back to practice, and apparently he's looked good. I don't know if he technically has the questionable tag on him going into today's game, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't play. As far as the running back position, I believe I saw somebody on Twitter a few minutes ago just tweet, I just had to insert Gus Edwards into my starting lineup because #2020.
Was it Dave?
Example, Dave, I bring that up because Dave, you're a big fan of Gus Edwards and his ability and his proficiency, and the fact when it's come to crunch time situations this year, they've actually leaned on Gus Edwards more than they had J.K. Dobbins or Mark Ingram. If you're desperate, is Gus Edwards a play?
Oh, you've got to be. Look, I'm a Gus Bus fan, probably the number one in the nation, but that backfield is just tricky, to be honest. I put him in the same category as J.K. Dobbins or Ingram. If you have to start one of them, it's a roll of the dice. You just never know who really it's going to be. But just goes to show you 2020, what we're up for. We're talking about Gus Edwards as a possible start in your lineup. Mm-hmm. Pretty crazy world.
Not wrong.
Adam Rank, he equated this backfield to 5 people splitting a small pizza. It looks appetizing. It looks great. And then you realize, I'm still hungry. Still want more.
We got questions from the J-Knobs around Periscope. Start Mark Ingram or Hollywood Brown this week in half PPR. Jonathan, what are your thoughts? Todd kind of gave it away. Okay, maybe.
Well, I'd go Hollywood there. Ingram's only seen, I don't think he's seen more than 10 carries this year. Hollywood hasn't quite broken out yet, but I'm pretty sure he's the most targeted player on that team. I'd probably roll with Hollywood there.
Very good, very good. In terms of IDP, look, Patrick Queen, I'm sure he's available on your waiver wire because, IDP players probably aren't that well known when you get further deep. But this guy was heralded as a good, pick coming out of, I forget out of college, but out of the NFL draft this year. He's playing the middle linebacker position. He's been playing lights out. I mean, it's kind of hard not to start Patrick Queen. Anybody else on the Ravens defense that we're thinking about, Nate, as far as starting?
Maybe Calais Campbell. The Bengals have given up so far in the season the second most points to both the opposing defensive tackles and defensive ends. So the interior line is getting beat up pretty good. So and the both tackles. So I mean, Jonah Williams is slated to play. He left a little bit, was banged up. So I mean, there's obviously a chance for reoccurrence. I'm never going to project and pick someone to play based on the potential that person might get hurt on the other side. But the pressure that Baltimore has should be, enough. And let's be honest, I think that we all agree that Baltimore should be up in this game, meaning that Burrow's going to pass, which Burrow does, even if they're winning the game too. But yeah, I think that Calais Campbell's a chance. Marlon Humphrey, Jeremy, is another good one. I mean, right now if you look at 40 to 50 passing attempts in a game, there's a decent chance that Marlon Humphrey who's being attacked for some, I guess lesser of two evils, right? Got to pick one side or the other. And that's a good cornerback's always the upside question play because, it requires a turnover, a splash play typically to produce good points.
Right.
Just on the offensive side, let this be a lesson to people not to draft a quarterback in the first round. People were drafting Lamar Jackson with the notion that I'm getting a running back and a quarterback one in the same player. He's barely been putting up QB1 numbers. He's had some okay weeks, but not the Lamar Jackson that we know of last year, which was 100+ rushing, couple of rushing touchdowns, 250 in the air, and two touchdowns in the air. If you drafted him in the first round, you're probably hurting a lot. So, just an FYI, public service announcement. Don't draft quarterbacks first round.
David, let me keep picking your brain real quick. Last week we saw Joe Mixon come in for his 40+ point game. Was last week the buy sell high window for him going against this Baltimore defense this week? Has he come back to earth in terms of production, I guess I should say?
And not to avoid the question, but this week is the test, to be honest. We saw him get a lot of usage last week and obviously performed with 151 yards and I believe 3 total touchdowns. So he did well. I want to see at least 80+ yards and a touchdown. If I don't see that, then it's just a one-hit wonder. We've all seen one-hit wonders. Wonderwall. What are those guys doing right now? Probably just chilling on their couch. And I think that's what you'll be doing with Joe Mixon if they use him like they did in the first 3 weeks. But look, they may have went, here's our secret formula. I know you mentioned that earlier this week, Nate, that if we give him the ball 20+ times, then we've got a chance to win. But they need to be winning and in order for them to really use him. And do we really expect the Bengals to be in the lead against the Ravens?
No, not so much, no. But speaking of a way that could get into the lead is with the wide receiver position. Todd, are we just fading AJ Green rest of the season and just going Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins at this point?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, at this point, AJ Green, depending on what size league you are in, AJ Green could be a drop. But yeah, Tyler Boyd has last 3 weeks, he's averaging nearly 10 targets a game. I think he has 24 catches and scored a touchdown in one of them. So he's definitely the main man there. And then when they're trying to stretch the field, they're going to T. Higgins. So yeah, at this point, I'm putting both of them ahead of AJ.
Are we interested in Drew Sample?
I'm not saying
No.
anything about Drew Sample on this show anymore. Last time that bit me, I'm done. I'm passing on that one.
It's
I'm allowed
crazy
to
to
blame
think-
my dynasty team because I've got Johnny Smith, but that's a desperation play because I've also got Noah Fant and Tonyan. So that's how desperate I've got.
Question: has AJ Green become the most expensive or high-profile decoy we've seen in the NFL this year, or at least in some time?
No, because you didn't pay that much to get him. You probably grabbed him in the, 7th round, 6th round. So, there's a lot of 7th round guys that are bust so far. It's just frustrating because you thought, in my opinion, I thought he was one of those potential wide receiver ones you were getting in the 7th round, but he just ended up being a 7th round bust. So, I don't think the price is too much.
Here's the worst part about AJ Green. The whole reason that was built into the ADP was the idea that he was going to be a bust based off of injury, not based off of lack of ability. And that's the worst part, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, Dave, but we at this point, if week 5 was going on, he said, how's AJ Green doing? I said, wide receiver 74 on the season or whatever number it is. You would say, he must be hurt. And I would say, no, he just is. He can't do much with, and he's top 10 targets.
I was going to say he's going to be top 10 targets. Has to be top 10
Golly.
targets.
So
Anybody else on the defense for this game, Nate? We talked about Baltimore. What about for the Bengals? Anybody? Jermaine Pratt, maybe? Or
yeah, I mean Jermaine Pratt is an option. You look at that. I get that front line is just hard to assume right now because now it's Carl Lawson getting the majority of the snaps, but Carl Lawson's one of those deep throws that you'd have to put in. Sam Hubbard really hasn't done much with on the season so far. He's always capable, but I mean, you would love to start a linebacker against this team that's so run heavy, but I don't know of any that I really feel comfortable starting over any of the other ones or anybody you might have in your lineup.
That's a good point. All right, let's go down to the ATL, talk about the Panthers and the Falcons. And Jonathan, I'm going to go to you, buddy, because we were having this conversation in our pregame show that you are in a position where you may have to start Teddy Bridgewater. Tell us why. Is it desperation, or is there something you're seeing in Teddy Bridgewater that makes you confident there?
Well, I've got Josh Allen, so it's a bit of desperation. But we were just talking about it before this. It's actually a pretty solid choice this week. I think he's a pretty good streaming option this week. Falcons are giving up loads of points to the quarterback. He looked good last week. So yeah, I'd prefer to be playing Josh Allen, but I'm not too unhappy.
Right.
Man, I'm hoping the Falcons get a win, just football wise, because they've had a rough trot this first 4 weeks. I just feel bad. I want to give them a cuddle and say it's okay. Times will get better.
Speaking of times getting better, Todd Gurley looked good last week against the Packers. Are we expecting these good times to keep rolling, Nate, with Todd Gurley?
I do. I think that's personally. I think that's an option that they have this week is maybe keep the ball on the ground a little bit. Matt Ryan didn't look right last week. I'm not saying he's off and that something's amiss with him, but it would be a good opportunity. But I don't know if Gurley can sustain that much workload. I like the fact that if you look around the goal line, he's top 5 in attempts. He's constantly in the end zone. He has a nose for the end zone, and so I'm comfortable with that in a high-scoring game like this with the implied point total that Vegas has. It tells me that Gurley's in line for I'm going to say a low-end or a high-end RB2 week.
They were good touchdowns he ran in yesterday. They weren't just little 1 yard, punch it over the line. So I think he's like you said, he's got a great nose for the end zone. One of them, he bounced it out to the left, using Matt Ryan as a blocker. One of them was just him, weaseling his way through into the end zone. Both about 8 yards out. So I like his chances of getting in the end zone. That's what you get with Todd Gurley. But buyer beware. if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's giving you a poor performance. But as long as he does, he's got a solid baseline.
On the flip side, on the other side of, I shouldn't say the other side of the field, but for the other team, Mike Davis has kind of proven himself to be a good PPR upside, half PPR upside running back, at least until Christian McCaffrey comes back. But there's one wide receiver who kind of has been letting a lot of fantasy managers down a lot this season based off of the hype coming into the season. That's been DJ Moore. And conversely, there wasn't enough hype for Robbie Anderson, and we're seeing a kind of a flip in their performances this year. Is this a get right game versus this Falcons defense for DJ Moore? Todd,
can I real quick? Can I make a little bet before Todd answers this with David? Dave, you and I believe both. I know you were on one side of the we'll say field with Robbie Anderson. I'm on one side with DJ Moore. Rest of season, DJ Moore versus Robbie Anderson. I know your answer. I know my answer, and my answer is Moore. At the end of the season, if Moore, whoever wins, the other person has to buy the opposing team's hat, shirt, jersey. You can wear this Chiefs hat or buy your own. I guess you're not wearing this dirty one. And I'll buy a Patriots shirt.
I want you to wear it as well, though.
I'll wear it. I'll wear it during the Super Bowl.
We'll be on air. We'll have the Super Bowl special here at Fantasy.
That's actually not a bad bet. I'll wear a Chiefs jersey in the last episode if that's the case. But no, there's no way. Robbie Anderson is his favorite target there. It's just, look, my big thing is targets. Who's getting the opportunity? And it's Anderson. At the end of the day, they both have 32 targets on the season, and Anderson is just doing. Don't get me wrong, it makes me sick saying this, but Anderson is just doing a lot more with his targets, and he's had a couple of 100-yard plus games, scored a couple of times. So I'd rather the guy who's proved it.
Going to the Falcons wide receiver situation, Todd. Julio Jones is. I don't know if he's a game time decision as we currently stand. Right now.
They're gonna see if he can run through. He did individual drills and stuff during the weeks, but they're going to test him out before the game. But as of right now, I don't know if I want to play him in my lineup, but now with the situations playing out with COVID, if you don't have really too many options, he is the 11 o'clock game. And if they say he's going to play, he probably won't get you a goose egg. So it's some points. So, if you're really hurting.
Well, let's talk about somebody who got you goose eggs last week, and that being Calvin Ridley as soon as Julio Jones went down. Was that just good defense? Was that just Jair Alexander of the Packers just locking him down just really well? Or is it, what was your takeaway from that, first of all, Todd, when you saw that?
I think it was a little bit of both. And then I think Nate touched on it a little earlier about Ridley Matt Ryan just not looking right. I remember the first target Ridley had in the game. It was just Matt Ryan just lobbed it in there when he could have zipped it in there, and it should have been a catch and a play for positive yards. But for some reason, Matt Ryan just did not put enough pace on the ball. So I'm not worried about Calvin Ridley at all. There's no way he puts up another goose egg. He's with that defense and how many points they're giving up. Calvin Ridley's a stud. He has to be wide receiver one moving forward.
I'm going to go the opposite way, with all due respect. I think Ridley proved that he's not a matchup-proof wide receiver one. I think he's a viable wide receiver one when Julio's on the field, but he just cannot do well with double coverage on him, and we saw that very much last week. I compared him last week to Antonio Brown and Juju when they were both playing together. And I think it's very much the same thing. Juju struggled the 1 year where he had to be the true wide receiver one. And I think we're seeing that in Ridley. If Julio's out there, I love Calvin Ridley. But if Ridley is the true number one, I'd rather Russell Gage, to be honest. But I just don't think he performs that well.
He put up 5 for 110 against Chicago 2 weeks ago. So I don't know if it's necessarily matchup proof, but I kind of hear you on the Julio part. Because that Julio being out there makes a big difference.
Yeah.
On the flip side, on defense, obviously for the Falcons, you're starting Deion Jones. I don't know if there's anybody else.
Are you though?
Let me put it another way. Out of all the IDP options on defense for the Falcons, he's the only one you would start.
Yes.
The Falcons.
Out of all the defensive back options for the Falcons, I'm starting none of them because Darquez Dennard is on the IR. Jalen Hawkins has a concussion. AJ Terrell has COVID. Dermonte Kazee is on IR with an Achilles tear. Keanu Neal is questionable with the hamstring. And Ricardo Allen is questionable. So I'm starting none. That just tells me fire up the Panthers. Jonathan, be happy. Teddy B is going to have 280 and 3 today, all to DJ Moore. I ain't wearing a Patriot shit.
But before we move on very quickly, I am a little bit concerned, and I say this being a CMC owner in very many leagues. When he comes back, I don't think we're seeing the same usage. I'm worried about, I think he's going to give you a safe floor. I'm worried about CMC not putting up CMC-esque numbers. I think they're going to start to use Davis, maybe 20-30% of the time where they would have used CMC. Is anyone else worried, or is that just me?
I don't worry about CMC.
So here's the thing. Here's something I've noticed about running backs who've gotten big contracts lately. With the exception of Alvin Kamara, who's basically, since Michael Thomas went down, is the superstar of that Saints offense, every running back in recent memory, when they've gotten a large contract, their usage has gone down from what it had been previously. Look at Ezekiel Elliott last year getting that contract. He didn't get the same rushing volume as he did years leading up to that contract. You're looking this year with Dalvin Cook not getting the rushing volume he had last year leading up to this contract. Still being very efficient, though, with what he's seeing. But the volume isn't there. It's almost like these teams who are handing out these high value contracts are kind of conserving these investments for the long haul rather than just putting them out there and having them, go all out and risk getting injured. I think what you're seeing with the Saints is because the window and having a championship run is shortening, and therefore they want to maximize all the talent they have right now. Is why you're seeing Alvin Kamara basically do everything, other running backs not being as involved. And so anyhow, to piggyback on what you were saying, I think when McCaffrey comes back, I agree with you. He's not going to be as incorporated just because of that long-term to short-term investment. They're not competing for a championship this year. They don't need to have him be the sole offensive player scoring all the points here. At least that's my take. On the defensive side, Shaq Thompson. What are our thoughts on Shaq Thompson, Nate? Or is Jeremy Chin the only must-start in this Panthers defense?
I think both of them. I like Chin quite a bit more than normal weeks because, so far Atlanta, if there's any position right now, Atlanta's giving like the most. They're allowing the most points to the safety position. So that's Jeremy Chin, maybe Justin Burris as well. But I love Jeremy Chin, so I'm going to continue to pump him into my lineups if possible.
All right, let's go to our next game. Let's go to Arrowhead Stadium. I got the Raiders and I got the Chiefs. Look, you're rolling with Mahomes, and I'm stealing that from you, David. That was one of your lines I believe you had earlier this year. Rolling with Mahomes. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Look, he hasn't been like the high upside play that we were all expecting him after week one. He's not putting up the Kareem Hunt numbers that we saw him as a rookie put up for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's getting to the point where I can call him serviceable. But is he playing up to that RB1 first round talent? I'm not so sure about that. Nate, you shake your head. Are you agreeing or are you disagreeing there?
I'm disagreeing right now. Let's see. Where is he at so far overall? I think he's RB12 on the season. He has 1 touchdown. Mm-hmm. Production is tied to touchdowns, as we know, and he hasn't needed the touchdowns to stay in that RB1 conversation. So when the touchdowns come, as in they probably will today, going against this Vegas defense, it's going to be there. We have to look at this as this first quarter. Each game that he's played, he's improved in certain areas going forward. That's what you want to see. Week 1, it was a showcase. They gave him tons of the ball. And you go forward to weeks 2 and 3 and 4, and he's still getting 20 touches a game roughly. And so, he's productive with it. Is he blowing up like we would expect? Like people were thinking, the 24 points a game crazy scenarios? No, but the guy break. He's top 12 with 1 touchdown, and they haven't needed, they've been in some tough games. Those first 4 games were extremely tough. It's not like he had cakewalks. So going forward, we'll see. I still think he'll finish in that top 6, top 7 running back conversation.
Breaking news right now, Julio Jones is out this week. So just take him out of your lineups. Another offensive weapon that you have to take out of your lineups this week due to injury and or COVID. Okay, so obviously Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, cool, makes sense. Raiders, Josh Jacobs, okay, he hasn't had the big game also ever since week 1. Going against this Chiefs team who, David, as you mentioned in week 1, David Johnson had a good outing against. Is this a get right game for Josh Jacobs?
Needs to be. It really needs to be honest, because he impressed us that first week with 3 touchdowns, and since then, they've actually used Devonta Booker and who's the other backup there?
Richard?
Rashad a little bit more than I anticipated, to be honest. But he's getting the carries and the yardage is okay, but he's got to start getting in the end zone. Otherwise, the price you paid for him might be a little bit too steep. So today's really the big showcase to see what his true value was worth.
Is there anybody else in this Raiders offense that we're even contemplating starting at maybe at wide receiver, Todd? Hunter Renfrow, or not even that?
Is Henry Ruggs playing this week?
That I'm not sure about.
I'll check real quick. But I don't like the Raiders versus the Chiefs at all. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed and Tyrann Mathieu have been lights out. I think they're both top 20 in NFL passer rating allowed.
Sneed's on the IR, though, unfortunately.
No, he is.
Yeah.
Expected to play.
Okay, well, still, they've been lights out. I don't want to mess with any other. I mean, they're going to be throwing, but
that's the crazy thing. Everybody's throwing against the Chiefs, and yet since you go back to 2019 and you're ranking the top 3 in terms of the least amount of points given up to the opposing team's wide receivers. So
yeah, it's just
crazy.
not a
You're
matchup
right,
I want to mess with.
Dude, you're spot on.
I mean, maybe Waller, but
right. Well, that's a guarantee. That's more so of a lack of tight end depth. Also playing a factor.
Yeah, he's a must start every week if you own him. Obviously.
Let's go to IDP. Jeremy, you have a question. Do you start Jonathan Abram this week? He is a violent tackler, but I don't see these tackle numbers as being something that's blowing me away where I feel like he is a must start from week to week. Where am I not seeing this, or is there something I'm missing here, Nate?
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to pass on this one. I don't want to have an opinion.
He's fun to watch.
I know.
I mean, he can knock himself out when running into
the tire.
Yeah, exactly.
Camera thing tire.
Camera thing on the field, yeah. But I'm staying away. He's gotten that shoulder injury. He's gotten a shoulder injury.
And that's the reason I want to I want to encourage to start him because, like I said, from weeks 1 through now, you should want to watch the players that are on your team. That's what makes this game fun, is rooting for players that you want to watch play the game of football. And Jonathan Abram is a guy I want to watch play football, but I don't want to watch him at 60%, And
he's exited. Hasn't he exited the last 2 games at times and gone to the locker room and stuff like that?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, he has 23 total tackles, 17 solo, great tackle for a loss, fantastic. Getting to the quarterback, couple passes to fence, the interception. Look, when he's 100%, I think he's definitely a must go. Let's not forget, I believe it was a shoulder injury last season that ended his rookie year, and now we're seeing that injury potentially pop up again.
Mm-hmm.
I would not feel comfortable. I think you can find better upside or even some cornerback upside, believe it or not.
This is a Chris Jones game. If we're going to find one IDP person, in my opinion, I think this is a massive game for Chris Jones. Up the middle, that interior line for the Raiders has been getting eat up pretty good. I mean, they give up the most points to opposing defensive tackles, and Chris Jones is the best defensive tackle, one of the best defensive tackles in football. So him going over that right side, depending upon who's in there, so like Incognito's been in and out. I think, what the hell's the guy? I can't remember their other guard's name. If I could remember every offensive guard for the Vegas Raiders, you guys would be very impressed. But I can't. And I think it's an obvious mismatch.
Now, going at the linebacker position, we saw Corey Littleton kind of have a little bit of a bounce back last week with Witkowski coming back, although it wasn't super impressive. Me personally, I understand people are still, even though we tell them not to, people are still thinking about, well, I drafted Corey Littleton as a high end or mid LB1. Like, he's not playing like a high end or mid LB1. You shouldn't play him. And until he shows that he's able to take control of this linebacking core, I'm staying away from Corey Littleton this week. Heading into last week, Nicholas Morrow was the guy you wanted, but he didn't put up anything. He probably was injured last week, if memory is serving correctly. Okay, so that takes care of that matchup. Let's go now to the Cardinals and the Jets. I'm calling it right now. I'm going to be a little clairvoyant. I think this is where Chase Edmonds takes over this backfield and Kenyon Drake kind of. And here's the thing: I don't think Kenyon Drake is going to get it done against the Jets. And if he can't get it done against the Jets, I mean, come on, right?
He couldn't get it done against the Panthers. That's what we said about the Carolina Panthers too.
Right. And you look at what Chase Edmonds' involvement. He's been either receiving touchdowns or been given the ball in within the 5-yard line, either receiving or being handed the ball. I think this is the Chase Edmonds takeover game. David, what are your thoughts on Kenny and Drake, though?
Yeah, look, they're getting the same amount of usage, to be honest. And I'm not saying that Edmonds is lights out much better, than Drake, but it's scary. If anything happens to Drake, you've got a potential RB1 in Chase Edmonds there. But the thing is, to be honest, they're not using the running backs as much as they were last year because they got their secret weapon, DeAndre Hopkins. They're giving him the ball. It's got to be 15 plus targets a game. So that's really what's killing Drake's value, is that he used to catch a lot of passes and give you a lot of PPR value, whereas that's really gone now because they're looking for Hopkins, and we're finding Kyler Murray is rushing the ball a lot more this year. So those two combined are really just draining all Drake's value, and Edmonds as well. But to be honest, they're both pretty even. If you have to play them, hopefully it's just a flex.
And of course, you're starting DeAndre Hopkins, you're starting Kyler Murray. Christian Kirk had a decent game last week. Are we feeling confident in him, Todd?
I think it's kind of hard to feel confident in any wide receiver other than DeAndre. Yeah, okay. I don't really. Other than DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, well, actually, Christian Kirk he did okay game. Got in the end zone, but he only had 3 catches for 19 yards. So if it's not DeAndre Hopkins, I don't want to mess with the wide receivers there.
On the flip side, for the Jets, Le'Veon Bell is returning. I think they're going to ease him back. I don't think they're just going to throw him to the wolves right now. And then again, if they do increase his touches to what he had been used to, that just tells you the level of desperation that New York is playing with. Which at this point of the season, with how things are going, why even risk it? I think Jamison Crowder is the only offensive option you can possibly go with in this matchup. Chris Herndon at tight end, the hype was there, just not seeing the production. Jamison Crowder for the Jets is all I'm thinking about. And then going for the IDP, Budda Baker should be back. Mm-hmm. He had the hand surgery last week, and obviously they missed him. And one player that we were hoping to see kind of step into this safety role, or at least, role overall in defense, was Isaiah Simmons, the rookie out of Clemson. And they haven't figured out how to use him at all, Nate.
Yeah, I've heard from sources, and that sounds, I can't believe I'm saying it like that. It sounds terrible. That someone within the organization has said that he has not adapted well. He's not making plays in practice. He can't cover anybody. And they completely overlooked what the draft capital was for him and his adjustment to the NFL speed. I trust the person who told me that. So, I mean, it's nice to hear, but it's unfortunate because I couldn't believe that. There was, he just seemed like a can't miss prospect.
That's exactly what you want to hear out of a first-round talent, top 10 pick. That's
Yeah.
On the Jets flip side, Marcus May. Yeah. Look, he hasn't really been playing that well again since that week 1 blow up. Pierre Desir actually last week, the past 2 weeks has looked pretty okay in terms of like comparing the two. I wouldn't start Pierre Desir. Brian Poole, on the other hand, you a fan of Brian Poole there?
I am. That's actually who I was going to say. If there's someone from the Jets, he's really stepped in and he's played in the box a little bit more lately. He's kind of all over the field, so that's what you want. I mean, I'd have a hard time playing him over any of the other defensive backs that I'm necessarily starting. But, I mean, he does have 23 solo tackles on the season, only 1 assisted. But, 2 tackles for a loss and a sack. So, I mean, he's in the backfield. He has 3 passes defense. So, yeah, I mean, the more I read his stats there, I think, and maybe I'm off of something, and I should be a little bit more on him. On the flip side, the person who I'm on, and I think the attention could be his way. Mekhi Becton or Mekhi Becton, I've heard both pronunciations or enunciations, should be out. I believe he's out this week. And filling in for him is a person by the name of Connor McDermott. He came over from the Bills. He's going to be lined up in task with Chandler Jones. Not an easy task. That wasn't an easy task for Becton, let alone for this guy. And so I think that while they'll try to put special attention to him, he should have a good game. On the other side, with Kennard being out, it's an opportunity for Hassan Reddick, who saw an increase in snaps, to get onto the field quite a bit more. And let's be honest, Joe Flacco doesn't exactly move. He's not the fleetest of foot, if you will. So I could see that being an opportunity for some production.
All right, let's head over to the Keystone State. We got a matchup with the Eagles and the Steelers. I'm fading Carson Wentz for the foreseeable future. I think he got lucky last week against this 49ers defense that was beat up. The receiving options are not there. Ironically, heading into this week, the wide receiver option for the Eagles, who has the best wide receiver to cornerback matchup, is actually Fulgham. Whoever caught the deep ball touchdown from Carson Wentz last week that nobody heard of him before, he actually has the best wide receiver to cornerback matchup on the game today. As far as Miles Sanders, you're starting Miles Sanders, obviously. For the Steelers, look, James Conner, ever since coming back from that week 1 injury, he's been putting up double-digit points, 100-yard games. I believe all of his games have been 100-yard games so far, which has been quite impressive. Obviously, they're not going to be splitting that backfield going forward. Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, Deontay Johnson, are we feeling comfortable with him coming back from injury there, Todd?
Yeah, he's coming. He just got activated from his concussion, but when he was playing, he had 23 targets in the first 2 weeks of the season, and then got knocked out week 2. But yeah, and then obviously he had a whole week last week to get right because of Tennessee and their COVID situation. But yeah, Deontay Johnson, I'm expecting him to be heavily targeted, and Big Ben's even talked about Deontay Johnson in the last couple of weeks about how comfortable he is throwing him the rock.
If you're desperate at wide receiver, Chase Claypool is someone who's probably on your waiver wire, and he's a real deep threat who could easily go for 80 yards and a touchdown. That one touchdown he scored a couple of weeks ago just made the DB look silly. So I don't know. Don't be surprised if we don't see him get used a lot more. So he might just
every given week he can score a touchdown because he looks like he's a legit deep threat.
Even just to stash him on your bench, just to see if anything happens. I think if something happens to Juju or Deontay Johnson, he's a great wide receiver 3/flex.
Now, on the flip side, talking about defense, we look at the Eagles linebacking core, and a friend of the show, Michael Bauer, who you see him almost every week here on our show, pregame show. He'll be back next week, actually. He had a little prior commitment today. Nathan Gary, Nate, you and I were kind of building his praises, and every time I go on Twitter, I see Michael Bauer just ripping into Nathan Gary, how he's not a fan, and that's putting it mildly. Is there anybody on this linebacking core that we are feeling comfortable about?
Well, the thing is Nathan Gary's not a bad IDP play. That's the only downside to IDP format, is that a bad NFL player can be a very good IDP player, and inversely so. The one player who actually he gave me this player's name to watch is Alex Singleton. Alex Singleton last week was the hero of the defense. He stepped in with TJ Edwards being out. He came in, had 2 tackles. He had that late interception that sealed the game, a couple pass defenses, and the touchdown. So not expecting him to do that each week, but he's going to get the snap share. I can't suggest starting him. But watch it. If he has a really good week this week, then maybe he's somebody going forward. Short of that, it's about it. The only thing I would say about Deontay Johnson is I think he's matched up against Darius Slay. I'm intrigued to watch that match. That should be a good one. I think that'll be the key, is seeing how his first game back matched up against Slay unfolds.
Another name to watch after this game, and normally, like we said, or we were alluding to earlier, cornerback is not a position we normally advocate unless you're getting a lot of targets coming your way. Therefore, you have opportunities for interceptions and passes defense. Mm-hmm. But in terms of play, Mike Hilton for the Steelers, cornerback, he has been playing really, really well. 21 total tackles, 19 of which are solo. He's got a couple sacks, passes defense, interceptions. For whatever reason, he's being targeted early and often. And he's a great IDP play if you need to fill in a defensive back spot or specifically a cornerback spot in your IDP lineups.
He's been a stud.
Just quickly, so I was just going to say, but before move on from the Steelers, make sure Eric Ebron, if he's on your waiver wire, he might be a good plug and play at tight end if you're struggling.
No, that's exactly right.
That's a good point. All right, let's go to Rams and Rams versus the football team, as I keep writing them down until they actually get a real name. Jonathan, these Rams wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. If you had to pick one to insert into your lineup this week against Washington, who would you pick, and maybe give us a little bit as to why?
I'm probably going Cooper Cup. I mean, Woods has been targeted, as normal, but he has seen his share kind of come down over the last couple of weeks. He had like a rushing touchdown a couple of weeks ago, but Cooper Cup just seems to have a nose for the end zone. So I think Cup for me.
All
So
right.
I'm going to go the opposite there. I think Bobby Trees is the way to go. You mentioned players who get used as running backs or in the jet sweep, and that's Robert Woods there. For those people who don't know, I'm referring to Robert Woods. Last week, we discussed it in the show earlier this week, Nate, that if it wasn't for that 54-yard touchdown that Cooper Cup scored, you're left with 5 catches for 14 yards in a very disappointing fantasy week. So I'm a bit worried about Cooper Cup just because he's so reliant on big plays.
I'm actually on the flip side. I'm actually worried about Robert Woods. His average depth of target right now is 5.3. He just has not been getting used down the field, and I don't know. That's just really worrisome when I watch this offense and I watch how they're using him. That's been my one concern with Robert Woods is they're not really stretching him down the field, and everything he's getting hit with and he only has 2 deep targets on the season, 20+ yards. So it's looking a little rough for Robert Woods as of right now.
They're not the high power offense that we were used to a couple of years ago, where you were pretty much playing every Ram that you had. They've definitely changed in their the way they're handling games.
Folks, before we keep going, let's introduce one of the newest members here at Fantasy and Frames. You saw the announcement over the weekend. He and Nate are going to be tackling our IGP content for the foreseeable future. We're really excited to have him on. Oklahoma Doug. Doug, how you doing, sir?
Hey.
What's up, fellas? Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely,
Just in the
absolutely.
hole, thanks for having me at the site. Thanks for having me on the show. What's up, Nate?
What's up, buddy?
Hey, man, apparently I'm not good with directions because the wife woke me up and she was like, this email says like an hour ago you're supposed to be there. And I was like, what? And I took notes on that and everything. So, apparently math is hard, guys, and that involves anything with numbers for me. Okay.
Well, we're glad to have you on regardless. And we love your work so far, and we're very happy to have you. And, you're one of the Fantasy and Frames family. So welcome to the club, man.
Thank you, sir.
Right, let's finish up just really quickly on offense, and then Doug, I'll go to you on defense here. For Washington, Antonio Gibson is basically the only person I feel comfortable starting on Washington, as well, I should say, and Terry McLaurin. But that's about it. The quarterback situation is a what show in Washington. Apparently, they're trying to trade Dwayne Haskins because after last week's game, he came in and apparently was boasting about his game stats versus the Ravens, even though they lost the game. And that rubbed some veterans the wrong way. A couple of days later, he's bumped down to 3rd string. Then reports come out this morning that they're trying to trade him, and they want Alex Smith to be the quarterback. So, you thought the drama was gone in Washington, at least for a couple of weeks, and nope, it's right back there, right back where it started. So, as a Washington fan myself, and to other Washington fans out there, strap in. It's going to be a long season, but at this point, we are used to it. All right, defense, Doug. Let's talk about some defense for the Rams. Micah Kaiser, he's filling in for that Corey Littleton role as Corey Littleton went to Las Vegas. He had a hot start to the season. Are we still riding the Micah Kaiser bandwagon there?
For sure. That's what I do right before a game, tip off is check those injury reports. Last I've seen, still questionable. I guess it looks like it's going to be a game time decision. But yes, if the guy's starting, I'm starting him. I believe through 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of the season, he was the fantasy number one linebacker. He's filling that role real well right there. If he's playing, I'm starting him. All right, I'm starting him, buddy.
Now,
sure.
Another situation in defensive back, John Johnson, he's obviously an IDP start right there. But, a lot of hype came into the season with Taylor Rapp, given how he played last year when Johnson was out. Then Fuller stepped in for a couple of weeks. Well, I think Rapp was either dealing with injuries or just he wasn't seeing the snaps. Last week, you saw a little decrease in the production of John Johnson, actually, who was normally the strong safety, but then he played more free safety last week. And you saw Taylor Rapp come in and play some strong safety. It was a very confusing week from IDP last week watching the Rams. What are your thoughts on Taylor Rapp going forward?
Well, Taylor Rapp, he's actually outsnapped Jordan Fuller for the year. Jordan Fuller is the guy that's actually been getting the start over Taylor Rapp to begin the season. Fuller kind of got a little banged up. Taylor Rapp stepped in, and in my opinion, last week is the best LA Rams defense had looked all year with Rapp in the game and Fuller out, Rapp starting. And in my opinion, it's because of the deep pass. In the previous games, Fuller wasn't quite the center fielder, like you said. With Rapp in the game, he comes down into the box and lets John Johnson play that Roman kind of see the ball, go get the ball, read the quarterback's eyes. Rapp come down in the box, makes the plays. With Fuller, it's a little vice versa. And through I believe the first 3 weeks of the season, the 2 games that Jordan Fuller started, the Rams gave up, I believe, 7 passes of 15-plus yards. Last week, although it was the Giants, they only gave up 2 passes of 15-plus yards. So I believe that's the kind of benefactor for the Rams, and they'd like to see Rapp and Johnson in there together. And I think the real call here today is whether or not Kaiser's playing.
Okay. On the flip side, football team, they may be getting Chase Young. He has been looking good in practice, or I should say he's returned to practice, been playing full speed. If Chase Young comes back, are we starting him in our DL1 spot or DL2 spot with confidence, Nate?
With confidence, I can't say with confidence. The only reason why is because I think Goff does a good job of getting rid of the ball before anything bad can happen. Unfortunately, he doesn't always get rid of the ball to the proper team, but he's done better this year in terms of isolating that. So, I mean, I'd like to start Chase Young, but I'd probably be happier starting John Bostic of anybody from Washington, I guess. Even though necessarily the Rams surprisingly haven't given up a ton of points to the opposing team's linebackers, and I don't know if that can change this week or not, but that's about it. I guess Landon Collins, of course.
Right. All right, let's head down to the Bay Area. Got the Dolphins visiting the 49ers. Reports are that Raheem Mostert should be back. I know a lot of people, they worry about the 49ers backfield, but I think if there's anything that we saw to start the season this year is that they trust Raheem Mostert. You saw what he did towards the end of last year. You saw what he did in the playoffs. I think we can finally put to rest that this is a committee situation with him back healthy going forward. That being said, he is coming back from injury. Jerick McKinnon has looked good. Jonathan, what are your thoughts? Are we going to see a split this week, or do you think this is Mostert's backfield if he is back healthy?
I think going forward, it'll probably be Mostert's backfield. This week, I'd probably be a bit more confident starting McKinnon. McKinnon's been really good so far this year. And with Mostert coming back off injury, I think they probably will still roll with McKinnon over Mostert. I think they'll both see a decent number of a decent number of carries, but I would probably lean McKinnon for this week at least.
So David,
I think we're going to see a split backfield, to be honest. I mean, McKinnon has really proven he's a little Swiss Army knife. Like I said, don't forget they paid a lot of money for him 2 years ago to move from the Vikings, I believe it was. And they want to get their money's worth, and they have so far. The guy who scored 4 touchdowns in 4 games. It's not like he had massive blow-ups on every single one. He's just been very consistent as an all-round player. So I don't see why they just put him on the bench and let Mostert be a 3-down back.
Let's piggyback and keep going with the offense for the 49ers there, David. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be coming back. Practice reports said that he's looking good, got some good zip on the ball. You have, George Kittle back last week. You saw what he did. I believe he set a personal best with 15 receptions, I believe, last week. Deebo Samuel's coming back. We're seeing what Brandon Ayuk is able to do. Is this going to be a surprising air it out show here versus the Dolphins?
I don't think so. I think it's just going to be a Mostert and McKinnon show because they're probably going to have the lead. I don't expect the Dolphins to be doing that great. I am curious if the Dolphins do start to get blown out if we see Tua enter the game. But look, I expect a lot of running in this game. That's what the Niners do very well. It might be Ayuk, with a few rushes here and there, but I don't expect Jimmy G coming off injury to be throwing for 350 plus yards.
Todd, Deebo Samuel came back last week. They eased him into production. I guess that's the phrase. What are your thoughts on Deebo Samuel this week?
I mean, he still has his little injury tag, but I mean, I'm definitely not trying to put him in my lineup quite yet. I still want to see a little bit more out of him. I mean, he only played 34% of the snaps last week, 3 targets. He did catch them all for 35 yards, and then they gave him a little end around too. So, but I just think right now we just need to see a little bit more of him. Let him just get all the way healthy before you can confidently put him in your lineup.
All right, Doug, let's go to the Dolphins defense real quick. 2 linebackers, Kyle Van Noy, Jerome Baker. They've been kind of 1 and 1A when it comes to production there, although we've seen Van Noy kind of step it up in other aspects of the field, not just in terms of tackle volume. I know we're pulling strings here, but if you had to pick one or the other to insert into your lineup, is there one that you favor more than the other, or is it just, just flip a coin and just put whoever's there?
Actually, I think a lot today has depended on the health of Emmanuel Ogbah. If Emmanuel Ogbah is good to go, I think they might let Baker play a few more snaps to try to cover George Kittle, because the best part of that Dolphins team is their secondary. So Emmanuel Ogbah has been playing real good football lately, and if he is out, then I say we see a little bit more Kyle Van Noy, the guy that can come off the edge and provide a little bit more pressure and a little bit better in the run D. Without Emmanuel Ogbah, I say we see maybe 60-40 Jerome Baker covering a little bit more of George Kittle.
And, it's interesting. I think, Nate, you had mentioned earlier, I think in a pre-show meeting, Byron Jones, their free agent acquisition out of Dallas, should be returning this week at corner. Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. That's a very good point, Doug, in terms of the secondary being their strength. Nate, for the 49ers, man, they let that Eagles team just come in there and steal a victory from them. Obviously, we're seeing, with Nick Bosa not there. I don't know what to make of this 49ers team from an IDP standpoint, aside from Fred Warner. One player that I am glad that he's getting some production, obviously not the production that we always hoped that he would have due to injury, and that is Jaquiski Tartt. I can't quit Jaquiski Tartt. 1, because the name is too fun to say. 2, I was really hoping that he would turn into a thing in San Francisco. But like I said, injuries have played a part in that. As far as any 49er defensive player, Nate, is there anybody that you're starting with confidence or starting?
With confidence, it seems like I keep going back to the well of Kerry Hyder Jr. I like his, presence in the backfield. He seems to always have at least a few hurries a game. I mean, the production's there. I mean, he's got 10 solo tackles and 2.5 sacks so far. So, I mean, since he's come in and he's got the snap share, he seems to be in the backfield a lot. I don't know exactly as far as anybody else across the board that I'm liking. I don't. I really don't, man. I'm looking through and I'm like, that's a tale of a good defense, as a whole, is when there's not one singular piece that stands out to you. It's that unit.
All right, we lost Doug for a little bit, little connectivity issues. He'll be back as soon as possible. Let's go now to Big D. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys and the Giants. Todd, let's start with you. Should we be trying to – actually, let's start with Jonathan, because he recently, in his 4-eyed observations this week, which you can find every Friday, released, he wrote a great piece on Darius Slayton. Is this a buy low, or is this a buy opportunity for Darius Slayton going forward there, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think this week was a perfect buy low opportunity for Slayton. I mean, we were just talking before this about how tough the matchups have been for the Giants so far this year. And the schedule is starting to open up a bit, and I think today's going to be one of the nicest matchups for him. I mean, the Cowboys give up the second most points to the wide receiver. Slayton's had at least 6 targets in his 4 games so far. He obviously had that huge blow-up game against the Steelers. Production hasn't been there for the last 3 weeks, but it's kind of understandable when you consider who they've been playing. So if I have Slayton, I'm fairly happy putting him out this week. I think he's in line for a good game.
David, let me get your opinion. Is this the week we trust Devonta Freeman, or not so much?
I think in PPR he's going to start to get more usage. He gave you a solid floor last week. I believe it was about 5 or 6 catches. The rushing yards wasn't anything crazy, but hate to say, but it really depends on the game script. If they can get a lead, they're going to see what they have in Freeman. There's really no one behind him. I mean, I don't trust Goldman. I don't trust Dion Lewis. So he's a 3-down back, I guess you would say. On the Giants, which is probably like a third string running back on a good team. But he's okay. The floor is safe. Just don't expect big numbers. But what I am concerned for, to be honest, on the other side is the left tackle on the Cowboys. I forgot his name.
Tyron Smith.
Tyron Smith. He's gone. So I'm worried about Dak and Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think Dak is going to have that much time in the pocket to throw as much, which obviously may hurt, Gallup, CD Lamb, and what have you. So I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on Dak this week than there has been in weeks prior. He is probably one of, if not the best left tackle in the game. So it's a lot of people in fantasy ignore offensive lines and offensive players like that, but it's a huge piece for them.
Is that both tackles now?
Joe Looney's out as well. They're starting center, I believe. So that's 2 pieces to that.
That's huge.
Todd, let me bounce back off of the receiving options. With Tyron Smith going down, they have been incorporating Ezekiel Elliott more in the passing game. When I was looking at a breakdown of passing target percentage, that Pro Football Focus put out last week, you have Cooper, you have CD, you have Zeke, you have Dalton Schultz, and at the very bottom, you have my guy Michael Gallup, who's just aside from that Seahawks game, he's just not been targeted a lot this year. Is this the week Michael Gallup gets on track, or is this wide receiver core outside of Amari Cooper just too unpredictable to predict?
I mean,
too unpredictable to predict. Yeah, exactly.
I can't quite get off of Michael Gallup yet. I mean, well, like you said, other than that Seahawks game, he's had 5 targets in each game and hasn't caught more than 3 balls. But I can't get off him. But yeah, between him and CD, the thing is that CD Lamb's just running the slot for him. So that's just CD Lamb's going to be on the field. So Michael Gallup is needing those 3 wide receiver sets tremendously.
Gun to your head. Who do you go, Todd? Gun to your head. You've got 2 seconds to put him in your lineup. CD Lamb or Michael Gallup. Go.
Oh, Lamb.
Yeah. That answers your question.
Yeah.
He's the better player right now.
Yeah.
I saw somebody on one of the comment sections here at Fantasy and Frames during one of our shows last week. Actually, our Start Sit show, which you can find every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern here at Fantasy and Frames, on as well as Twitter, as well as Facebook, and Periscope, and YouTube, all that jazz. Mm-hmm. And that comment was, should we be surprised that Michael Gallup is not seeing the volume? They gave Amari Cooper a 5-year, $100 million contract. They drafted CD Lamb in the first round. Should we have not realized that these are the 2 people that are going to be focused more on this offense? I don't know. Had they not drafted CD Lamb, obviously we'd be talking something a little bit different, but that's just not the case going forward. I think Dalton Schultz is a great tight end play. His involvement, like I said, in the passing game has been pretty prevalent, as well as the fact that tight end is a thin position. In terms of defense, let's start with the Giants, because hopefully we can get Doug back, because I want to talk to him about the Cowboys. In terms of the Giants there, Nate, what are we thinking? Blake Martinez, is that pretty much it?
Yeah, so must starts Blake Martinez. Questionable tag is Jabril Peppers with a low ankle injury right now, so I don't know what to think of him. Last minute throw in because of situation, because of the Tyron Smith and the Joe Looney situation. Leonard Williams, here's a guy who came over from the Jets. Obviously, the draft capital was there. He was a top draft pick. He's actually had a pretty successful season so far, and I just got to love the matchup. What I don't like is game script, because if we see in what we get jive, the Cowboys will be leading that game, and they're not going to rely on Dak to throw the ball 57 times again, which means it's a Zeke game, and then that leads more to the Blake Martinez. But in the weird NFC East, if the Giants can stay pace a little bit, I think that gives an opportunity for Williams to maybe get a few more pass rushes in and maybe get to Dak.
All right, since we can't get Doug back just yet, and going forward, folks, when we as soon as Doug is in, because I think he's having some connectivity issues, we'll go straight to IDP just so we can get his opinion because we love his opinion here at Fantasy and Frames. The Giants, Aldon Smith. Can we just not predict what he's going to go off?
It's just every other week. It's just every other year. It's like the Matt Ryan scenario. So it was week 1 was 18 points. Week 2 was 5. Week 3 was 23. Week 4 was 3. So that means this week should be approximately. You know how that game that choose the next thing. It's like the 11 and 6, and you have to figure out which what that weird little clue is. I'm gonna say 17 is the point total this week.
I keep taking him in and out of some of my lineups, and I keep missing the weeks.
Well, the thing is, the reason for his productivity spikes and peaks and valleys is that they drop him back into coverage in these games sometimes. And I don't understand what it is. And maybe I just don't understand enough about defense. Someone's probably can chime in and be like, you idiot, here's the reason why. And it would make sense. But I don't want to know why. I do. But I just want him to continue to rush the passer and do what he does best and give me points. So, I would still start him. He's too good not to. The upside's too high. Now,
folks, for those who are unaware, when we're talking about IDP scoring, we're talking about Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. Doug, thanks for coming back. Question about the Giants, the Cowboys defense. Can you be comfortable with Aldon Smith or any defensive lineman?
Yeah, at this point, I think you got to be comfortable with him. With the pressure or with the attention that DeMarcus Lawrence is getting, the person on that other side is going to eat, and Aldon Smith really taking advantage of it. So yeah, I'm firing him up.
Okay. In terms of the secondary, Chidobe Awuzie is coming back at cornerback. He's been targeted a little bit when he was in the games earlier in the season. I'm a big Chido fan. I hope that continues. I'm not inserting him into my cornerback slot this week. Is there anybody else for the Cowboys, Doug, aside from Jalen Smith, that we're considering starting?
Yeah, with LVE out, Joe Thomas has been a really good play. He's been playing 100% of the snaps, and he's been having a productive time once LVE is declared out. So if LVE's out, I'd start up Joe Thomas next to Jalen.
All right, let's go now to the Colts and the Browns, and let's start with IDP this time, and we'll start with the Colts. What are our thoughts on Darius Leonard? Is he in shallow IDP leagues now? Is he necessarily a must start given his lack of production, or are people freaking out too much as far as him not living up to the LB1 status that they drafted him as?
In my opinion, I think Darius. Go ahead, Nate. Go ahead.
No. We don't have to worry about it this week, which is nice. Because he's out. So
right.
But going forward, I would have a hard time taking him out of my lineup just because we've seen the upside. Wouldn't you agree, Doug?
Yes, sir. 100%. Just like you said, for IDP, it's about opportunity, just like it is on the offensive side of the ball. And one thing Darius Leonard has is not much competition behind him, because you'll see today with Darius Leonard out, Bobby Okereke is a problem in coverage. He is going. The Cleveland Browns are going to eat up the Indianapolis Colts in the middle of the field. Anthony Walker and Okereke starting today.
On the flip side, for the Browns, is there any linebacker that we're actually comfortable starting in our IDP spots this week, Doug?
It's been pretty much of a void for me, Jorge, since Mac Wilson went down to start the season. I was kind of high on Jordan Phillips, the LSU rookie, but he hasn't got a lot of run. So it's not been the most productive spot there. So it's an avoid if possible for me.
So basically we're starting Myles Garrett, and that's pretty much it from this Cleveland defense?
Olivier Vernon, if he's healthy and he's playing today, with all the attention Garrett's going to be getting, I might put Vernon in my lineups there. Maybe a low end DL2, high end DL3.
Okay, let's go to offense real quick. Colts. Man, I would love to say Jonathan Taylor with confidence, but they haven't been using him confidently. Last week we saw Naheem Hines come in a lot. It's kind of concerning. Todd, what are your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, exactly. He only has 4 targets over the last 3 weeks, and the Browns have been pretty stout against the run. They haven't allowed a running back to rush for over 55 yards yet. Obviously, if you own Jonathan Taylor and with Corona and the running back situations and health situations, he's going in your lineup. But I think Jonathan Taylor is definitely going to have his hands full this week.
Todd, go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, I think this is a prove-it week for Jonathan Taylor. If he can't prove that he can be that elite-level running back, I think we're going to see a running back by committee. We saw Wilkins even come in last week, Hines, Jonathan Taylor. So, if he proves he's just going to be average, then it's going to be a who's who of running backs. It's going to be very similar to the Ravens situation, I think, moving forward.
In terms of the wide receiver position, it's obviously gotten thin in Indianapolis with Pittman going down. T.Y. Hilton, Jonathan, he hasn't, for whatever, there's a number of reasons why him and Phillip Rivers haven't been connecting so far this season. Has Indianapolis turned into just a run-heavy team in the days of having a pass-heavy offense kind of behind them now, do you think?
Yeah, I think with that offensive line, I think it kind of makes sense. If you have that offensive line and you draft Jonathan Taylor, it kind of makes sense to become a bit more run-heavy. And Phillip Rivers isn't quite the quarterback that he used to be. I have a hard time trusting T.Y. Hilton at the moment. He's just not putting up production, and with all these receivers out, you would think that he'd be going off. You might have to, considering the situation that we're in, but you might have to play Hilton, but I wouldn't be too happy.
That's the shock. That's the shock,
Yeah.
Jonathan. You mentioned like he technically is the number one right now, right? They lost Campbell. They lost Pittman. There's really who else is there? Zach Pascal,
Zach
wide
Pascal,
receiver.
Nate
crazy.
knows who's there at a receiving position.
Micah
And then
Kaiser.
you got Marley Cox, who's the biggest human I've ever seen.
Yes, unfortunately, we're seeing Indianapolis. They moved him into a more he pass blocked more than he has this entire season, which I hate. He was running less routes. It was not my favorite week to see. I'm not, and like I said, don't get me wrong, I'm not wearing my my jersey, but I do believe that he has touchdown upside every single week, just because Phillip Rivers has shown he's went his way in the red zone every week that he's gotten at least a decent amount of snaps. So I'm off on Hilton too. If you look back, he hasn't been even as the number one. He's been the one. He's never not been the one there since going back as far as 2016. And it's been, what is it? It was week 6 last year was the last time he had 6 catches in a game. That's just not. I just don't see the upside anymore. It sucks. I hate that.
We got an IDP. We got an IDP alert. Micah Kaiser is out for the Rams. So, the safeties for LA are pretty much the only ones I feel pretty confident with, unless somebody has another option. For the Browns.
I was going to say, do we have to change the way we look into drafting prior to the season? Because the number one thing we were saying is there is so much depth at receiver. Make sure you get your stud running back. But what have we seen up until now? We've seen guys like Gaskin and James Robinson, all these other running backs start to get work. And the guys that you were drafting late, like AJ Green, like T.Y. Hilton, thinking they were going to be serviceable, they've been droppable. So I don't know. I'm just wondering if next year we need to reconsider how we evaluate our draft.
You just want to start some controversy right now with all the 0 RB people versus the 0 wide receiver. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. Right. Let's fight.
Okay. Yeah, let's get some controversy and stir that up on Twitter. All right, let's go to the Sunday night football game. We got the Vikings and the Seahawks. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we get there, the Browns. Kareem Hunt has the potential to be an RB1. I think going forward, week in and week out. Odell Beckham sure looked good against Dallas last week. I think he actually might get a bulk of the attention today. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is finally a Jarvis Landry welcome back to the NFL game this week. Before we keep going, we got a question from Jeremiah Dawson. Hooper, I'm assuming he's talking about Austin Hooper for the Browns or Traquan Smith in full point PPR in his flex. I have to go Traquan Smith. You look at the target usage. Even with Michael Thomas coming back, I don't think he's not confirmed to come back. He's quite technically questionable. If Michael Thomas doesn't play, I feel very confident in Traquan Smith this week. And even if he does play, I don't think they're going to use him to the full amount that we're accustomed to seeing Michael Thomas be used. And you see the target volume going there at Traquan. I have a hard time trusting Austin Hooper or any Browns tight end, to be honest with you. And does anybody disagree with that, or is that pretty spot on? Or
Michael Thomas will be on a snap count, even if he's on the field. So I think Traquan Smith, the good thing, I hope he actually will, because I think that'll increase Traquan Smith's chance of scoring, because the number one DB is going to have to be lined up against Michael Thomas, which might open up lanes for Traquan Smith. So I think he's a sneaky good play this week.
All right, let's go to Vikings and Seahawks. Doug, Yannick Ngakoue, since coming over from Jacksonville, you would think that he would need Daniil Hunter on the other side to draw away attention for him to be productive. But he's looked pretty damn good so far this season. What are your thoughts on Yannick as far as him being an every week defensive line start?
Yep. And hey, just right back, real quick to the Traquan Hooper. I'm actually going to go Hooper. I'm actually going to go Hooper. Not only is the Colts defense great against the run, they are number 2 in the league against the pass. And as I said, without Darius Leonard, the middle of the field should open up quite a bit. I think it's a big Austin Hooper day with Michael Thomas maybe returning. I think the Chargers have a good enough DB group to shut down the receivers and bad enough run defense to be able, the Saints to be able to run. So I'm going to go Hooper there.
All right, Jeremiah.
The Seahawks, Ngakoue.
Yes. He's been playing lights out, definitely starting Ngakoue. In terms of linebacker, Kendricks, and then Harrison Smith for Minnesota, right? Is that pretty much it we're feeling confident in?
I like me some Mike Hughes there. I like Mike Hughes. He's a guy I like coming into the NFL, and he's a cornerback that I seem has a high floor week to week. So if you're in the pinch, Mike Hughes.
Okay, Nate, for the Seahawks, with no Jamal Adams again this week, we called it last week. We were expecting high tackle volume from Bobby Wagner. Now that Jamal Adams wasn't there, we expected the same thing for Bobby Wagner again this week.
Sure. I mean, we also were right on KJ Wright. We thought he would come in and he had 6 solo and, the tackle for the loss. He had, most importantly, a 3 pass defense, which was huge. I wonder, and Doug, you might be able to tell me, have we heard any more about KJ Wright? Is he actually playing this week? I know he had a questionable tag last I saw.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, Nate. The big question to me is that safety group there. I believe Jamal Adams, is banged up. I don't think he's playing, is he, Nate?
No, and last I heard, Ryan Neal stepped in and actually played a lot of the safety position. And Ryan Neal, coincidentally, went to the same school as Jeremy Chin. He was a safety at SIU Carbondale, so they had both of those two there. So of course I dug into Ryan Neal, and he had a really good. I mean, he had 5 solo last week. He had 2 pass defenses and interceptions. So he's an intriguing play this week as well.
I'm scrolling through Twitter right now, and I'm not seeing anything in terms of KJ Wright missing this game.
Yeah, I saw that he's healthy.
Okay, good.
For the offense, obviously you're starting Dalvin Cook. I think, Todd, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can count Justin Jefferson as a must start also, given how he's been playing opposite Adam Thielen. Would you agree?
I think the top 4 wide receivers in this game are must starts because both these defensive have just been giving up loads of points to wide receivers. And yeah, Justin Jefferson back-to-back games with 100 yards. I think he can make that 3 in a row this week. I think Seattle's allowed 500 more yards to opposing wide receivers than any other team in the league. So, yeah, fire up your Vikings wide receivers for sure.
David, is Chris Carson the most disrespected running back in the NFL, given how well he's produced this season?
Absolutely, and I mean, you and I are in a few leagues, and I was very high on. I drafted him in the end of the second round in a few leagues, and I know I probably got some laughs earlier in the season. But look, he's proven to be a top 10 running back every single week. Incredible value in PPR, especially. Russell Wilson trusts him, not just as his running back, but also running routes. I mean, you probably have more stats on this, Todd. But how many routes has Carson run compared to other running backs this year? It has to be up there in the in the
I
sort of
haven't
top
looked.
5
I
or
can look
6.
on player profile real quick.
Yeah, but look, he's incredible value and obviously a must-start matchup-proof running back.
All right, so now let's go now to the Monday Night Football game, Chargers and Saints. And Doug, I want to go back to you. Kazir White has been playing really well the past few weeks with Drew Tranquil going down to injury. But the rookie, Kenneth Murray, had a decent week last week. I mean, if we're looking at the total tackles on the year, if we're looking from the solo to assist numbers, Kazir White, 22 solo to 8 assists. Murray, 18 to 5. But last week, he upped that number from 6 solo to 4 assisted. Are we thinking this is the time to buy low on Kenneth Murray?
Yeah, 100%. The kid, that's what they drafted him to do, was around and make tackles. And it seems like he's getting legs under him a little bit, figuring out maybe a little bit more of the NFL route and able to cover the slant, the cross route a little bit better. And let's face it, we want him to catch it. That way that boy can make a tackle, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. On the flip side, for the Saints, Marcus Davenport, defensive end, opposite of Cameron Jordan. He's kind of questionable right now heading into tomorrow. If he does not play, I've been a huge fan of what Trey Hendrickson has been able to do opposite Cameron Jordan. He's been a viable defensive end starter. In terms of linebackers, Demario Davis, with the 5-2 scheme that they run there, he's one of the 2 linebackers there for the Saints. You're starting him with confidence. Malcolm Jenkins coming over from Philadelphia, returning to New Orleans. I kind of was thinking that he was kind of one of those aging veterans who has kind of past his prime and going back home. He's been playing pretty well, wouldn't you say, Doug?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He was one of my redraft diamonds, as dynasty and redraft, as different as it can be. That's a guy that could have been a league winner this year and literally not on your next year. So it's the definition redraft goal. Okay.
Exactly. On offense, we got Justin Herbert for the Chargers taking over as the starting quarterback. Look, he's played lights out. I think with the exception of one game where he was 10 yards short, he's thrown for 300 yards passing each week. With Austin Eckler going down, we have to expect there's going to be more passing volume to Keenan Allen. And even Hunter Henry is unconcerned. The real question here, and Doug, I want to go to you. David. Joshua Kelly, are we trusting him as a viable flex option this week?
He's a flex. I think he's going to get the opportunity. He's going to get 15 plus carries, but he hasn't really done incredibly well. I mean, I think there was one game where he got 27 carries and couldn't even crack the 100-yard mark. He's also had a couple of fumbling issues, and as we know in the NFL, that is just a no-no. It's a fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So I think if he does anything that resembles, poor quality, then he's going to get pulled. It might be the Justin Jackson show. Don't be surprised if Justin Jackson really comes out to shine, especially in his PPR value. I think the Chargers need.
And we're losing
So
David.
Jackson might be that play.
Okay. In terms of the Saints, if Michael Thomas is playing, given the COVID situation and players that are missing from these teams, it's kind of hard to bench Michael Thomas. I think you should kind of temper your expectations there. But again, we went back earlier talking about Traquan Smith. I think he's definitely a good play this week from a receiving standpoint. Obviously, you're starting Alvin Kamara. I don't think you necessarily have to start Drew Brees, but again, going back to this quarterback situation, especially in these super flex and 2 quarterback leagues, like you have to start who you got because the pickings are slim on the waiver wire. And so coming to our last game, I don't think we really need to talk about this game, not because we should feel confident from every player, but I don't feel confident this game is going to happen, which is the Bills and Titans, given the fact that this is supposed to be taking place in Tennessee. And in Tennessee today, they had the positive COVID test. I think we're going to see this game get canceled. If it does go on as scheduled on Tuesday, tomorrow night we'll have a special extended edition of the pregame show. We'll have some of the guys come back and we'll just talk quickly about who to play on offense and defense for Tuesday night. But for right now, I think we can kind of assume that this is not going to happen, which is unfortunate. But like we said in the beginning of the show, folks, these are trying times. These are untested times. We have no idea, if we're going to have a full season. There's a lot of things we don't know. But the important thing is that we just sit back and enjoy these games. One of the people here at Fantasy and Frames, Aaron Pags, he said it best last year, and it really, really means even more so this year. Once you set your lineups on your phone or in your computer, put your phone down. Put your phone down and watch the football games. You staring at your phone isn't going to help somebody score a touchdown. And the fact that we don't know how many weeks we have left in the NFL, given all these outbreaks of COVID-19, the opportunities to watch full football games is potentially limited. So really enjoy watching football. Check your scores later. Enjoy it while we have it. Okay, so 30 minutes to kick off. Thank you all for showing up today. I want to thank everybody here at Fantasy and Frames. And as far as David, thank you very much for joining. Doug, welcome to the Fantasy and Frames family. You should see all of our articles dropping this week. And of course, check out fantasyandframes.com for all your offensive as well as IDP fantasy football needs. So for everybody here, I'm Jorge Edwards. We'll check you out next week, folks.
See you guys.